What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, we're keeping this conversation going. How do you stay grounded in a world full of noise and chaos? What are your foundations? What are your core values? Maybe it's your family, your community, maybe it's your faith. What are the things that help you take a breath and kind of gather stuff in instead of reacting emotionally to things like it's really easy for us as humans to do? Instead, you have perspective. You have a filter. And maybe everyone else in this world has one and I just don't. But I think a lot of us are missing a filter. And I have a filter. I use it. In fact, I've gotten a whole lot better at using it over this last year. But sometimes I still want to sit there and act emotionally instead of focusing on my foundations. One of the things I've done here recently that's helped with that is I have been exercising a lot. I've been going out for a lot of runs. I ran my first half marathon back in April, and then that motivated me to continue. Eventually, I reached out to my college coach from Northwest University in Kirkland, Washington, and Coach Bill Taylor. He was great. He said, absolutely, I'll coach you again, Chris. And he started sending me these workouts, and I got progressively better. And from April until October, when I just ran my last half marathon for the season, I took off 20 minutes. Now, that's a lot of time to take off, but my first one was pretty slow. Along this time, folks, I also got brought on as an ambassador for Athletic Brewing Company. Absolutely delicious NA beers. They're not a sponsor of the podcast. I'm just talking about what I like to drink, folks. And as part of being an ambassador, we get these like meetup nights on Zoom where we get to engage like legitimately some famous folks. And I had the opportunity to listen to Nell Rojas. And if you don't know who Nell is, and you may not, I didn't know who she was before that meetup. She is a world-class marathon runner. Started as a triathlete and then transitioned into running marathons. And she's placed in very high spots in her races. Ended up going to the Olympic trials in 2020. Just had a great story, both of her athletic upbringing, having another really solid world-class dad that ran distance, and then in her own performance. But what really grabbed my attention was during that time she talked about the fact she was needing to take a break from training hard because she had overtrained. And oh my gosh, I just grabbed a hold of that in my mind and I went, think about the correlation to that in life. We go too hard and we crash and burn. I mean, that's like been my story. 2010, I did that. I did it again here in 2023 when I had to check myself into a PTSD recovery center. And I was like, I want to see if I can get this amazing athlete in person to come on the podcast. So totally reached out to her, hoping she didn't get a no contact order against me. And she was cool about it. She said, absolutely, I'd love to come on the podcast. So that's the guest today, is professional athlete, marathon runner, Nell Rojas. I'm excited for you to hear from her. But before we get into that, folks, I want to talk about the hat I'm wearing today. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. Otherwise, I'll describe it to you. It's a blue hat with what looks like deer antlers on it, and it is my Deer Hollow hat. That's the place I checked myself into back in July of 2023. It's a PTSD recovery center that focuses on the first responder and warrior class community. And I would love to tell you that it was unicorns and candy canes, and I just ate ice cream each day, and it was like, Club Med. But that's not what it was, folks. It was a lot of hard work. The therapists there pushed me. Sometimes they stepped back when they saw that I needed some space, but then when I was ready, they stepped back in and kept pushing me and walked me through doing some really hard, really challenging, really scary trauma work. And it was somewhere around the middle of the time that I was there that the work really started to stick, somewhere around day 16, 17, 18. And I didn't leave there all better, but I left there healing and more equipped to do the work myself. And I really appreciate everyone from Lisa at Intake to my main therapist, Lisa, and Coley, who is cooking as one of our chefs, and just everyone else. I'm not mentioning them all. There's tons of therapists there and the fellow clients that were just total rock stars and shared their burdens with me and allowed me to share mine with them. Folks, if you are a first responder and you're not in a good spot, or if you love a first responder and they're not in a good spot, Deer Hollow might be a great option for you or for them. Check it out down in the show notes. There'll be a phone number and their website down there. With that, let's get into this interview with Nell Rojas. Nell Rojas, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate. I gotta admit, I didn't know who you were. I don't know a whole lot about the running world, right? Honestly,
not surprised or offended.
Well, I said to you in the intro, I got 4 daughters, and if you were maybe like a cheerleader, then I would have known you. Or if you were a pop star and singer, maybe I would have known you. Or currently, the world that me and my wife are in is drama, which I didn't know I liked.
Drama, like what kind of drama?
Like acting, like my 2 of my daughters, my 2 youngest, my 13-year-old and my 18-year-old, act in a local theater company.
Oh, cool.
But then their passion for it has caused us to watch other drama productions and travel around and going to off Broadway shows or other type of things. And
oh, cool. Yeah,
it's cool. Live theater is pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, I just got back from New York, and I saw. Is it mostly like musicals that they're into?
On the most part, every once in a while there'll be just an acting one, but almost everything's a musical.
Okay, yeah, I just saw Hell's Kitchen.
Ooh.
And it was like, I literally cried from the very first song to the last song. And it's not because it was like, it's a coming of age story, and it's like loosely, I think she says it's not, but it's loosely based off of Alicia Keys, and her life. But it's just like, so we go to the theater. I go to the theater a lot in Denver. They have a big theater here, the Buell, and they have, the traveling Broadway shows. And we go, like, we have season tickets. And when I say we, my mom, and when I'm nice to her, she lets me come. So, so we go, and it's just like, for me, it's so inspiring. And I absolutely love how amazing these actors, singers are. But we went on Broadway the other day, and like we looked at each other, we're like, oh, like it is a whole nother level when you go to Broadway, and you're like, wow. You thought you were getting like the best but like you go and you're like, oh my God, like it resonates with inside your soul. It's just like so amazing. So that's cool. I'm into drama as well, I guess. Is that if we call that drama?
I think it's called drama. It's the positive form of drama, not the negative form of drama. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I've learned in life is just the beauty of what other people, whether they be, in my case, like I'm talking about my kids here, but even my friends, right, that will introduce something new to me that I'm just not familiar with, and it enriches my life a little bit.
Absolutely.
Hey, Nell, for folks that haven't heard your voice before, do you mind introducing yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Nell Rojas, and I am a professional marathon runner. I run for Nike. I was the top finisher at the Boston Marathon, I think 2020 and 2021. I was 5th place in 2020, 10th place in 2021, top 10 at the New York City Marathon. I've won a national championship, 10-mile national championship. I also am a coach. I live in Boulder, Colorado. I coach runners here. And yeah, that's like my running background.
Hey, I'm starting to feel more and more like a jerk after the beginning of the podcast. So I want guess how many marathon runners or distance runners I know by name. One, and her name is Nell Rojas. That is it. So I just wanted to be clear when I said before I didn't know who you were before that interview. I see people running. I'm just like, I couldn't tell you a name of a player in the NFL right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just don't know people's names in sports a whole lot because of other things in life. So.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't be, like, you know, all these little worlds are very, you know, niche and small to us. The running world is very small, very, you know, I mean, it's growing rapidly in the US and around the world, but you know, I understand that. I mean, here's the thing. I am right now I'm single and so I'm dating and I'm on Hinge, right? Or I'm on like dating apps.
Yeah.
And you know, my profile says like it says like I think it says like marathon runner for Nike or runner for Nike. And like people like I will no one knows what that means. People are like, so are you a model for Nike? Or like what does that entail? Or like what so do you like they have no they couldn't even guess. They wouldn't even be able to be like, you race marathons professionally. Like they don't even know it's a sport.
Are
So
you being
I get it.
chased? Like, do you have is there like lions that are chasing you that if you don't keep running, they're going to
Right.
eat you? Like, I don't understand why you would run so
Exactly.
far.
They don't get it. They don't get it at all. And I'm like, wow, it's like, it's actually good for me to understand because, you know, when you're in a world, it's your world. So it's good for me to back up and be like, yeah, people don't even know this exists.
That surprises me. Like, I mean, I knew it existed, right? But that surprises me. I would have actually like thought you would have totally played that differently. I would have thought you'd have been like, "Hey, I'm gonna be just like this, like Nell R or something like that." And I have some hobbies. I like to run on the weekends or something like that. But you straight up put on there that you're a runner for Nike. I would have been afraid, especially as a woman, that like people would be hitting me up just because of that or something like that. But instead, you have people like being like, "What's a runner for Nike do?"
I mean, you gotta like use your assets, right? I mean, I'm not trying to dumb myself down here.
No, totally. Absolutely. No. And why not? Right. Because yeah, I think that's awesome. What got you? Well, I know, but I'll ask the question anyway. What got you into running?
Yeah, so my dad was a runner, as well. You know, the running boom kind of in the United States was in the 80s, and that's kind of when it became a thing. And so my dad was like one of the first, you know, like with Frank Shorter, who, you know, is um a medalist at the Olympics and was like one of the best runners ever of all time for the US. He was like in his era, and so you know he ran for Nike. He actually was like one of Nike's first employees too back in the day, which is
Oh, wow.
kind of cool. But and one of Nike's first sponsored athletes. And so I was always really proud of him. He won like a race in Boulder called the Boulder Boulder, which is a big race for us here. So I was always really proud of that. And so that kind of got me into it. I was never like I was more growing up a basketball, soccer player. And then, you know, just when you're good at something, like it just kind of gravitated towards running and ran in college. And then after college, I did triathlons and kind of got away from running. And then, but I always ran for fun, you know, and loved it. And it's just like, you know, it's one of those things that's just like in my bones, you know, it's in my family's bones. My two older brothers both run, but like not seriously at all, but like, you know, they run every day, you know, we're just a running family.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I got into it.
It's just what you guys did. Did you ever feel like it was a shadow? You know what I'm saying? Like you were being forced into it, or was it something you enjoyed when you were younger, like high school years?
No, I got really lucky. You know, my dad never pressured me into doing it if I didn't want to. And, you know, to this day, he doesn't. He coaches me, and but to this day, like he's like, I dictate everything. I tell him what I want. I tell him, you know, how far I want to go with it. And then he's like, all right, I'm here to help. So no,
Great.
I never felt like, yeah, of course there's pressure. And you know, I always tell, I don't coach high school kids anymore, but I did for a while. I coached high school, and um, you know, the hardest place to be is like like a female like endurance athlete superstar when you're like 14. Um, because you just don't have I mean, that's when you're learning how to, how to, um, kind of balance that and take that pressure but you don't really have those skills yet. So you put all this pressure on yourself and all these other things, especially as an endurance athlete, eating disorders come into play. And it's hard to be successful as a runner later on in life if you're so successful early. It's really
Mm,
seldom that we see a successful, like 14-year-old girl, have a
continue
later
into
on career.
womanhood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it because of like is there some science behind it or some kind of explanation or
Yeah, I think a lot of it is everyone gets excited. The kid gets excited. Typically if you're a runner, we're pretty type A. We want to go for it. We get, you get on a roll, you kind of get like greedy in a sense. And the coaches do too. The coaches are like, yeah, like you're running well, let's win state, let's win nationals, instead of thinking about like, okay, when she's a senior in college, like that's 8 years down the line. And that's our main goal right now. How do we hold you back? Because no one wants to be held back at this point. The parents don't want to be held back. I mean, I'm sure you've kind of dealt with this. It's, and then in a lot of these places, maybe the parents are athletes and they're seeing, they want success and that's good. But I think, once the athlete overtrains, hormones get, funky and mentally, maybe they get burnt out. So I think it's a physiological and psychological just burnout.
yeah. You've talked about you just mentioned overtraining, and that was something you said in that the ambassador time that we had with the Athletic Brewing Company ambassadors. I'm sure that's happened in your career where you have overtrained. What led up to it? I think that's the first question. What led up to maybe not having a boundary there, pushing too hard? What was that like?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of things for specifically endurance athletes. And for me, I was training for the Olympic trials. And you'll see this every time this happens, every time a big event happens. People go crazy. They do crazy things. They do things they haven't done before instead of like following with what works, or making baby steps. They like, they get nervous. And I think I I was one of those people. I didn't really, and I would say like, yeah, I was running, 115 to 125 miles a week. I probably averaged a little bit higher than I would normally average. Um, but it was also in Florida. And so we were encouraged to heat train.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
heat training is a big it's big on it taxes your central nervous system.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're doing that on top of strength training plus 120 miles a week,
Yeah.
um, and then you just throw this in, um, you don't really realize it at the time because you're just like, no, you're just so blinded and you're like, I have to do these things. I have to do everything, these people
Mhm.
tell me to, or this research article says. Um, and for me, it was not only overtraining, but it was under recovering was a big one for me.
Okay.
So like when I'm stressed, like I wasn't sleeping enough. I just I couldn't let down. My body couldn't let down.
Yes.
Um, I wasn't sleeping enough. I probably wasn't eating enough, because you don't even realize it, but it would be hard to like stay on top of all of that. Um,
And you're burning just stupid amount of calories. When you're putting in that many miles, your body needs the fuel to continue on and be ready for tomorrow, I would assume. I mean,
yes, but you get to this point, your baseline at this point, because you've run this much for so long, is you're skewed. You don't understand how hard you're working because
Yeah.
it's normal for you.
Yep.
So you're eating like a normal human because you don't know that, like, you're like, oh, I only ran 16 miles easy today. That's nothing. I had no hard efforts in there. I didn't. So it's like your brain tells you, oh, you barely trained,
Yeah. Yeah.
but then when you're out of it, you're like, oh, wait, oh, wait, that's kind of a lot. Um, so, and then with running, the other point I was getting to is there's so much psychological stuff going on, right? And the same is true for anything, right? So like you're trying to prove yourself, or you have this ego, you have this identity, or all these different things are wrapped up in this outcome goal, or your training. And in running, it'll really screw you over, because you're really taxing your body. In
Yeah.
basketball, you know, maybe it'll screw you over, but it's so, you could shoot free throws. And that's not like running a lot. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
endurance sports there's no skills. It's pure like work, right, on your body.
Mm,
So this is where you get into trouble as a runner.
yeah.
You're going through something. So instead of figuring that something out, you're gonna avoid it and you're gonna go train harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those 2 points you made, both working too hard and not recovering. I'm just sitting there thinking about this applies to everyone, whether someone is an athlete, an endurance athlete or not. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I, I experienced it in a non-athletic way in my profession where I was going too hard, not letting my body recover, and actually coping with going too hard with alcohol, which meant I wasn't getting sleep even more, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And there's two options: die or crash and burn.
Mm-hmm.
Either just keel over and die, or eventually your body's just going to tell you, I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to crash. And so
Yep.
I'm just thinking about, what do you do? What, I guess, to avoid, and or you as a coach, now as you're coaching other people, how do you help them avoid? How do you, as that kind of that clear voice, the person
Mm-hmm.
who sees this a little bit more objectively than the
Mm-hmm.
athlete themselves, how do you help people avoid that?
Yeah, it's way easier to see when you have like an eagle eyes view as a coach, like you start seeing comments, like I'm fatigued, or I haven't been able to sleep, or if, there will be comments about whatever, life stress, work stress, emotional things. And if you see them start to, it's just not just this like one day thing. If it's one
Yeah.
day thing, you're like, okay, yeah, let's keep an eye on it,
Let's push through it. Yeah.
right. And it's like, okay. Um, Once you start seeing it, for me, what I see is people will start saying, I'm fatigued, or this is happening. And then the next week, they're like, I'm getting these cramps in my run and I don't know why. Like, and I'm like, I know why. I'm like, it's very apparent what's going, it's just like the stress is causing you to not recover, fatigue, and so basically I'll back them off like right away. And I'll do it in a way, you have to do it because they don't want to be backed off, right? So you have to do it in a way where you're like, okay, here's the plan. We're gonna take a down week. But this down week means that you can go a little bit harder during your workouts, or like, you just have to be like, or you can be like, this down week means next week, like we can bump it up a little bit, but let's
Yeah.
just like make sure that you're recovering. And it's just like catching it early, talking to them about it. Most people are pretty understanding and will listen. And I think I have luckily a lot of people trust me because of like results, personal results and coaching results, which
Yeah.
really, really helps.
Oh,
So
completely. Life is about trust. If we trust, When people trust us, we can say an awful lot. And when we trust other people, we're willing to let them say things to us that might burn a little bit. But since we trust them, we trust that they have our best interest in mind.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, I know about 56% of my listeners are women. And you brought up eating disorders.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Image, unfortunately, I don't know, it's just an American thing or a world thing.
Mm-hmm.
Women's self-image is so important to them, and guys don't help this. And eating disorders are so common. Is that something that you ever struggled with? And if so, what did you do to work through it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As yeah, a female distance runner, I bet I can't tell you how many of us have struggled with eating disorders. Um, I had one pretty early on, when I was in middle school, and I think that had a lot to do with I've been this tall since I was in kindergarten. And I'm 5'5", so I'm not tall
You
anymore.
were a really tall kindergartner.
Yes, but I was going to the WNBA. So I was always, a bigger human than everyone. And so that was hard. That was hard for me. And I think it's it's something I think about a lot because as like a strong female athlete in the running world, I'm
Yeah.
like, how can I help more young athletes? What can I do to help them? Um, and I think there's just so many things that go into an eating disorder. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of you know, grief, everything else that goes into it. And what I've learned is that hopefully, there's these girls come out the other side without too much damage and learn from it and have good role models and can see people like me. I'm like a bigger runner. I don't like to say that because people get mad, but
But you are.
what I mean, but yes,
I'll say it. I'll say it.
yeah, what I mean by that is like I just have more. I weigh 30 pounds more than most of my competitors,
Oh,
and
bigger like that. That's not what I meant. I meant bigger as in like you were really good. Oh, I'm sorry.
oh no,
That is not
I
what I
meant
was
physically
saying.
bigger.
That's twice now that I've said something stupid. If I say it 3 times, I want you to hang up on me.
No, no.
You have more muscle definition. You were a triathlete by definition, which you should have been bigger, definitely as a triathlete.
Yes. So for me, it's like, all right, at this point, I'm 36, I'm almost 37. I've done a lot of work on my shame. And
Mm,
so I can show up and I can be grateful for my body and I can like love my body and treat it well. But um I think you just have to go through your own journey and learn that.
I like that. Love, grace, right? And embracing yourself. Something
Yeah.
I would hear a lot from my oldest daughter. She would talk about that a lot because she had struggled with a self image and she would talk about, I love me. And like, oh, yes, sweetie, that's a really good place to be because this
It's a
world,
hard place to be too.
yeah. Tell me more about
Really
that.
hard.
What do you mean it's a hard place to be? Tell me more.
Oh, it's hard to get there.
Hard to get. Okay, I got what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah.
And even maybe stay there, I would think, because anything else in my life, it's not really that I arrive. You finish your race,
Hmm.
you maybe get the medal, and so that you finish. But with everything else in life, I feel like it's this constant journey where if I take too long celebrating, then it's already passed me by type thing. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It is. There's no there's no finish line.
So as a professional runner, like how does that work? Like I'm assuming you're obligated to compete in so many events. Are you told which events you're going to compete in? How does that work out for professional athletes?
No, basically, I mean, we get to decide what we do and what races we want to compete in. Um, n- and there's a couple things that go into the decision, right? What races are you good at? So what races are you going to do the best at?
Yeah.
For the most part, sometimes maybe you want to do, like, if it's not a marathon, you know, that those are my A races, are the marathons. I compete at a lot of you know, like 10Ks, 5Ks, half marathons. And those maybe I'm like, okay, I want to like do races where I'm weak at to get better at them. But you know, you want to do well at these races. And the reason is, well, you make money, right? Based off of your placement,
Yeah.
right? So if this is our the way we make a living, it's like, okay, this has to be part of our decision. Like, how much money is this race going to pay me to come? So races in the US will pay Americans better, right? So, you know, we might get, you know, anywhere from a 20K to 100K appearance fee, where a marathons will be like, I'll pay you this much to come race at my race.
Okay.
And then maybe like Chicago has a bonus if you're the first American to cross the line, or if you even PR. So if you run this, and this is just in your contract, if you run this pace or this time, you get another bonus. So money, timing, you know, like if you get selected to be on a world team or an Olympic team, then you kind of have to time everything correctly. Um, and there are some races where like your sponsors, like I run for Nike, so like they might give me bonuses to go to different races if I do well at those races. So they
Yeah.
might be like on my list of like, okay, if I go do this, then I can make this much money. So that's kind of a way to pick races. And then like I run really well at Boston because it is a hilly course and I do really well on hills. But yeah, we get to pick our own schedule.
I love it. I love it. What do you do for nutrition? I'm just sitting there thinking, I mean, there's so much noise out there on nutrition. Like, and I'm not talking about necessarily in the running world. I'm talking about in general for people. You know, you need to be carnivore, you need to be vegan, you need to be, you know, this, you need to be that. And I call it noise because I think there's some positive things with these different diets, other than, you know, the McDonald's diet where I just eat McDonald's every day. I think that was proven by the movie Super Size Me. Um,
Not the way to go.
yeah, not the way to go. How do you approach it? And it has it been trial and error? Has it been like, did you hire a nutrition? How did that work out for you to find what works for you for your body to operate at its best?
Yeah. Yeah, as a like a professional runner, you know, that's at the forefront of your thinking, right? Like, how do I optimize my nutrition? How do I optimize my performance in every little way? We're talking like the 1% here. Like, what can I do? So I, as a coach as well, wanted to, you know, I've always wanted to like, you know, experiment the most that I can, find the most you know, like be knowledgeable about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I've worked with multiple either dietitians or nutritionists or even, yeah. And I've done probably everything under the sun. I've tried everything, you know, like I've tried keto, I've tried fasting, I've tried like high carb, like you name it, like I've tried like cycling through like high carb, low carb. You name it, I've tried it, right? And what I keep finding and coming back to is just eating a normal, balanced diet is like,
This is super simple. I love this. Keep going. Keep going. I like this.
yeah, the if there's one thing, it's just like eat, you know, a variety of things. Make sure you're getting enough food, find what works for me. When do I feel good? When do I not feel good? Um, you know, eat non-refined things for the most part, but like let yourself have whatever you want sometimes, you know.
Yes.
That's honestly like I talked to like the, you know, one of the best sports physiologists at Nike, you know, he's worked on a lot of amazing things and I talked to him about it and he's basically like just normal eating is good. Okay, okay, got it.
I love that. That makes it so much simpler. And that's what honestly what I found too. You know, over the last, I told you before the episode that I got back into running around April, really hadn't done anything competitive for about 15 years. And um, I cut out most of the sugars. Now,
Hmm.
like you said, if I want to go have some ice cream, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go have some ice cream. And for a
Hmm.
while there,
Yeah.
I was only allowing myself to do it after a race. Like that was
Okay.
kind of like my reward.
Yeah.
But I feel different after I eat it, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
I'm being so disciplined with having on the most part a clean diet with whole foods
Hmm.
that when I go and eat that sugar, that just super refined sugar, it
Yeah.
tastes great
You
while
don't
I'm
want
doing
it.
it. I'm like,
Yeah.
ooh, this is so good. And I finish it, and the next hour and a half, I'm just like, oh, I don't feel great.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Wow. I'm going to shift from there because I'm sitting there thinking, I mean, especially for the listeners that don't run, I got one buddy that does ultras, and but for people other than you and him, um, what do you do to cross train? Because I'm just assuming, I mean, running is not easy on the body.
Hmm.
Do you do other sports to give your body a break while you're actively training for an event?
Um, so because I after college I did a lot of triathlons, right? And triathlons is like huge volume, right? I could ride, run, and swim in the same day, you know, and then when I started just doing running, I was like, this is nothing. Like I have to do more than this. Like I was like, I know I can be, you know, do more, right?
I only ran 25 miles today. I'm slacking
Exactly.
off. My
No,
gosh.
literally. Like I'm like, uh, and so this is another thing that I've like kind of like fought with. I've kind of tested, I've kind of done different things. Um, but basically, since I was a triathlete, I kind of used to incorporate a lot of, you know, I ride twice a week and maybe swim twice a week during my marathon training. Um, and then like a year later, I'd ride once a week and swim once a week. And then a year later, it was like one ride a week, you know, and so I've kind of tapered off my cross training as you get more serious into running.
Yeah.
And there's not a wrong answer for this, right? Like is it more beneficial to just rest, you know, because running is really
Oh,
hard on your body,
yeah.
than cross train? Like maybe. Is it more beneficial to take a run away and put a swim in or a bike in? Depends. Um, so it's like weighing a lot of different things for different athletes. A lot of athletes, like, first of all, like I like at this point, I'm like, I really don't want to sit on my bike or I don't want to get in the pool. So like
Yeah.
that leads a lot of like my decision making right now. I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's not
Super
motivating
easy.
for me.
Yeah.
I'm definitely in the gym doing strength twice a week. That's important. Um, but so now I don't really do any cross training.
Okay. So if your body needs a break, you just give it a break, or you what I heard you say earlier is you're going to ease off. You're either going to drop your mileage or drop your pace if you feel like your body's telling you, "Hey, no, we need you to back off."
Yeah, typically. Yeah.
I love it.
I mean, you know, I'm still learning. So hopefully that's what I'll do now.
That's what I say with most things. I am a student of life,
Right.
right? And with a lot of things, it's the first time I've ever done it. Maybe not in when it comes to running, but there could be unique challenges that is the first time you're doing it, and so you're having to learn all over again at this many days old. How do you approach this challenge?
Mhm.
What do you do for? And I've been coughing over here as you've been talking on my drink, so I apologize. That's why I kept
Oh,
looking all weird here. What do you do for mental toughness? I mean, training itself creates mental toughness, I think, but that's one thing I found. I remember when I showed up to college, uh, I our coach told us we were going to do, and we raced, I think the 8K or the 10K, I can't remember now.
hmm.
But this is like one of the first weeks of college. And he goes, "Hey, we're going to do 400-meter intervals today." And I was like, "All right, how many are we going to do? 8?" Because I think in high school, the most we did was like 6 or 8. He goes,
Hmm.
we're gonna do 21 at race pace." And I remember looking at him and going, "That's not humanly possible." And he goes, "It's humanly possible and you're going to do it." And Nell, we went out and did it.
Yeah.
Blew my mind. The competitiveness with the other athletes, us,
Hmm.
trying to race each other, but also supporting each other as well. Like, come on, we're doing this together.
Hmm.
I was blown away at what my body could do compared to what my mind thought it could do.
Hmm.
Is mental toughness just a part of your normal training, or I mean, like, are you into yoga? What things do you do to help yourself just have that edge?
Oh man. I honestly think for a lot of us, it comes with the territory,
Yeah.
right? So we've been doing this for so long, and it's just day after day, year after year of pushing the edge and pushing yourself and under like learning, your boundaries and learning what you can break through and continuing to show up. So that means like failing a lot and then
Yes.
showing up again and being like, oh, didn't matter that I failed. Like that wasn't so bad. I'm not scared anymore. And then so you show up to anything, you show up to a race, you show up to a time trial, and you're like, I'm gonna give this all I have, and that's all I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just continuing to show up and seeing what's possible each time you do.
I love that. And
Hmm.
again, I love specifically with sports, the crossover and the lessons that I've been able to take away from being an athlete into my normal day-to-day life. And I think that's the way life is most of the time. Showing up is half the battle. Show up. It's not easy. That you have a tough conversation you need to have with someone, and
Hmm.
and you're afraid about how they may react. Show
Hmm.
up. Lean into
Hmm.
it. Don't punch people in the face. I mean, that's typically a general good guideline itself.
And it's always okay. It's always like, the worst that can happen has happened and you're still okay. So I think that's kind of mental toughness is just like persisting and being very, very, what's, that word, coming back, always coming back,
Resilient, being resilient.
resilient. Yeah. Um, not, not letting others kind of dictate anything. Running is a sport where so many people can just be in your ear. They can give you advice. They can tell you what you should do. They can tell you what you can do, what you can't do. Um, and it's coming from all directions,
Yeah.
and if you listen, then that's when you get in trouble. That's when I've gotten in trouble in the past.
Oh.
And when you can yeah, when you can just drown out the noise and you can kind of, to me, mental toughness is a lot about ego. It's a lot about not having an ego. It's a
Mm.
lot about being like, um, like it doesn't matter. And therefore I can give it my all
Yeah.
and show up for myself.
I love that.
Yeah. You okay?
I don't know. I keep having to
I know.
mute.
Did it go down the wrong tube?
Yeah, totally did. I was
Oh no.
drinking. This is going to sound horrible. I was drinking a little protein drink, and I apparently didn't stir it up enough, and so I got this
Oh,
powdery mixture. I'm
oh no.
grossing out all the listeners. They're like, "Oh my gosh." It's worse on YouTube, folks. So if you're watching on YouTube, I apologize that much more because you're going to see how much I've been coughing and how Nell's been carrying the show. I don't even think she's always wanting to talk, but she's looking at me going, "This dude doesn't have it together." So
No,
he's
I'm like,
insulted.
okay. Think
Insulted me twice. He called me big a little bit ago, and now
yeah.
I was meaning. I thought you were big time. Yeah, I'm big time, but I can't say
No.
that. I'm like, yeah, you are big time, girl. You go. Um, this is a selfish one, and I got my notepad out. a notepad out now for this one. What do you do to help your body recover? When you are training hard, what are some of the disciplines that you have in place after workouts, maybe even just on a normal basis, not when you're, having some kind of injury that you do to kind of help yourself bounce back for the next day?
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing is sleep. Like, and that cannot be that cannot be negotiated. It can't be pushed a little bit. That boundary can't be like anything. Like that is where it's like you set, if you want to be a good athlete or if you want to get better at whatever you're doing, like you have to sleep. So set yourself up for that no matter what it takes is what I've learned and where I've gotten in trouble in the past. But yeah, no, recovering, there's a lot of fancy tools out there now, which are great. But for me, it's like making sure that, and I come from a background of like hustling, right? I come from a background of building a business. I've always worked for myself. I've always been like, okay, how do I build this? What can I do? Like doing whatever I can. And so for me, tapering off and understanding that actually like less is more because the better I
Mm,
perform, the more successful I'll be at my whole life. Everything, the more
yeah.
opportunities will come to me.
Yeah.
So for me, it's been backing off. It's been making sure I have at least a little bit of time after my workouts to like decompress, maybe lay down and like take a small nap, or if I can't fall asleep, just like lay there. Um, making sure I'm not rushing to the next thing is really important.
Wow. Yes.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Oh, it's super hard because we try to stack up our schedules and we have all these things we got to do.
Mhm.
And so everyone is trying to squeeze in things and slowing down. I love
Mhm.
that point. And then the sleep thing. I don't know how much you know about me. I'm a retired police officer. I ended up having to medically retire because of PTSD. And, and I was not getting good sleep.
Oh, I mean,
I was getting called in all the time. We were
yeah.
chasing, homicide suspects, child sex offenders, and I I was sitting there kind of, I'm okay. I can get by with 5 hours and coffee. Uh,
Mhm.
yes, kind of, but no, not really.
For a
You,
little bit,
yeah,
yes,
for
kind
you can do
of.
anything for a little bit.
Anything for a
Absolutely.
little bit. And
You want
and
to?
when you're getting away with it, you think you're getting away with it, but you're not.
No.
Yeah.
I really got into Dr. Matthew Walker's book titled Why We Sleep, and it
Mm,
is remarkable science. The Huberman Lab podcast spotlights him. There was a 6-part series there. And when I read that book, my eyes opened. Like the child abuse cases, the death scenes didn't help, right? Like those were definitely hard on me as a human, just the way
mhm,
I processed them. And I wasn't helping myself because of lack of sleep. And sometimes I got fine sleep, but there was just a lot of times in a couple seasons in my career where I wasn't getting good sleep. So now I'm stingy. Now I am stingy with my
good.
sleep. I go to bed at 8 o'clock. And
Wow.
like if I have a buddy call me, I had a buddy call me, I don't know, this had probably been a year or two ago. Oh no, I think it was within the last year. And he goes, "Hey Chris, can you pick me up at the airport at 9:30?" I said, "Absolutely not." He's like,
Mhm,
"What?" I'm like, "I go to bed at 8." He goes, "Come
mhm.
on. I just need a ride." I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give you money for an Uber."
Exactly.
Like
Yep.
I will make sure you get a ride if you don't have another friend, my buddy. But I'm just saying, I need to get good sleep. And there's exceptions. Like if Monday nights we pick our girl up from church kind of late, and so we get to bed at 9:30 or something like that. But
Mhm.
I think last night I was in bed at 7:45 reading a book. And
Wow.
I feel super old because of
That's
it.
so
But
amazing.
I also wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
and so I enjoy those early morning sipping coffee, getting ready slow times as well. So
great. Yeah, good for you. I mean, that boundary is is good. It's amazing that you have that boundary, and I'm sure it's made a world of a difference.
oh, I feel so much clearer headed and I'm
Mhm.
more in control of my emotions. You talked about before, if you want to be a good athlete, get sleep. I would say if you want to have good relationships in life,
Mhm.
if you want to have good relationships in general, as sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and romantic relationships and
Yeah,
all of this, get great sleep. You're going to show up better prepared to manage the human being emotion that we all have, when things get tough. So
absolutely.
tell us
Mhm.
about your business. So you're competing. So you're training. You have this competitive schedule where you're signing up for races, and then you also manage coaching people as well. So what is coaching athletes like for you? Is it just there in the Denver area or the Boulder area, or is it across the nation through virtual connections?
Um, No, it's yeah, I do it remotely. I would say like maybe half my athletes are in the Boulder, Denver area, which is amazing because I have one practice a week where it just helps so much if you see them, you're like
Yes.
you can coach them in person, you can modify their workouts, you know their body language, you can tell if they're fatigued, if they're not, like it like that's everything to me. You can, and it's like a great community. You can get good morale, you can get good energy from it. Like it's just a good atmosphere to be in. So that's here, and then yeah, just all over the US. I'll coach remotely. Um and I absolutely love it. Like absolutely it fulfills me, and I I think I should be doing less of it because it
Mm,
is. It's like, it's these people who are running, everyone's so passionate about it. Like running is something where people just, like when my friends start to run, they're like, this is a drug. And I'm like, they're like, this is a
yes.
trip. What's happened? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, welcome. Like now you get it,
Yeah. It's
and
called dopamine, and yes, your body's
right.
releasing it into your body.
Exactly. And when you get some, it feeds your whole life. Like, you become more, you want to eat healthier, you want to go to sleep more, you want to you see some success, so you want to get a little bit faster. There's just so much that,
Yeah.
it does for people. And so everyone's passionate, everyone really cares. And so I also have to show up for these people because they care. So I have to care, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that, I have to know their schedule. I have to know what mood they're in. I have to know what works best for them. I have to know what terrain they have around their house. I have to know, like there's so many things I have to know. And so say someone's like, "Hey, Nell, can I call you?" I'm like, like I have to be really good at setting my boundaries, which I've gotten
Yes.
better at every year. I'm like,
Yeah.
because I'm a better coach when I set my boundaries. Like
Yeah.
they understand it, and they we have mutual respect for each other, so they're really understanding of my training schedule. Um but yeah, it is I would say at my level, I'm one of the only ones that actually works.
Oh,
There's
wow.
maybe a couple other people or that do, I think, as much in that front, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing for me because then, you have other ways to fill your cup and you don't put as much pressure on yourself, and it creates opportunities as well.
Do you ever hear yourself saying something to one of your athletes? And as you're saying it, you kind of like hear it yourself. You're like, ooh, I should be listening to the same advice I'm dishing out right now.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
all the time.
I just sit there and think about like the times in my life that I've either had a mentor or that I've been mentoring someone else. That's
Mhm,
the feedback I get from my mentors is Chris, I'm actually getting more out of this than you are because
mhm,
they're having to live the example. If they're speaking some wisdom into my life, they're
mhm.
they're also kind of checking themselves, going, "Am I actually doing this? Oh shoot, I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep right now. I've been getting six for the last 2 months. Maybe I should listen to my own advice
Totally.
and
Yeah,
set some boundaries."
yeah,
I love it.
yeah. And I think everyone, like, I think having a mentor, everyone that I look up to or like I think is really successful in my eyes, or I'm like, okay, everyone has a mentor.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And I also feel so I'm like, okay, I also feel very honored when people trust me and want me to help them through this really important thing in their lives.
Yeah.
I like take it very seriously because I'm like, okay, like I better not F up, So I'm like, shit.
When it's just me, it's a little bit less pressure. But now I have someone else's, goals and ambitions on the line here that I don't want them to fail.
Oh yeah, and they will fail under me,
Yes. Well, they should. If they don't fail at all underneath you, then you're probably not pushing them hard enough, or they're not trying hard enough, right?
Right,
Because I fail all the time as an athlete.
right.
I did
Hard.
it this weekend. My goal was 149.59, as I told you, and I got 150.54. You know what kind of pissed me off with that? My Garmin watch told me I was on pace. My
Oh,
Garmin watch, I mean, I was watching all my miles, and I and
yeah.
I had room to spare. I had about 42 seconds to spare.
Yeah,
And I'm getting close to the finish line, and I'm watching my watch, and I'm like, something's not right here. Either one, they moved the finish line, or two, my watch isn't correct. And my watch goes off at the half marathon place, and I still got 100 meters or
yeah,
150 meters to go. And
yeah,
I was just like, "Argh."
yeah. Well, also you probably didn't cut the tangents perfectly. Um, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So you probably ran a little extra. Um,
Okay. Yeah. That's a good point.
and um, yeah, like if it was through any sort of buildings or yeah, it's hard to trust your watch. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
a good thing you learned.
Totally, right? I failed kind of. I didn't really fail. I looked at it as
Right.
still a success. It was a PR for me, and it was a lot of fun, and
Amazing. Yeah.
it has me feeding into this next season of both half marathons and 70.3 triathlons.
Amazing.
What's next? What's your next event?
Uh, I'm gonna run the Houston Half Marathon. It's in mid-January. It's like a fast, people always run like American records, world records, like it's just a fast race. So
Just good weather, I assume, in
good
January in
weather,
Houston.
yeah,
Yep.
flat. Hmm.
I love it. So that's your next. Did you call it A race? Is an A race what you're training for? And
Yeah,
then a B or C race is maybe something that, so this one would actually probably be like a B or a C race then, right? Or no?
this would be like a B race. I'll run a spring marathon, but you really can't say which run until they like release it.
Okay. I
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah,
yeah,
you're still watching the calendar for that.
yeah.
One last question. What's your guilty pleasure when it comes to when you're going to cheat diet wise? Like, I already know what mine is. Like, what is it like? Hey, I'm going to like enjoy something right now, and I don't give a damn about how much sugar's in it.
Oh my gosh. What like it would be like French fries with a quite literally like a cup of mayo.
I love mayonnaise on it. Yes.
Love mayo on anything,
Yes.
but French fries with like mustard or ketchup and mayo, like that's like, or like corn chips. I could eat like 5 bags of corn chips in one sitting. I love corn chips and I love French fries.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my family, my girls and my wife will make fun of me because that's the condiment I put on my burgers. I just have a dab of it on my plate, and that's why I dip in my French fries. I don't know why
Everything, yeah.
I enjoy it so
So
much, but
good.
I do. And then my lovely wife, she literally earlier, we got married when we were 18, and early in our marriage, she said, I don't want flowers. I want French fries. I want French. And so like I'm like, are you tricking me? Am I gonna get in a lot of trouble here,
Yeah,
woman? And she's like, trust me, I don't want flowers. Flowers die. French fries I can eat. And so
yeah,
I to this day, I know that if I'm gonna connect with her heart, I buy the woman some French fries. And
that's
she's
amazing.
it's cheaper too. I'm super happy. She's
And
easy on me.
you guys are still together. Amazing.
Right.
That,
So
that works.
yeah, because the French fries is part of what makes it happy.
Well,
Hey,
the listening.
well, it is. And actually getting back to the whole lessons on failure. I wasn't good at that when I was young now. Being young in the military, I remember the first time I failed at something, like I was devastated for the
Yeah,
weekend. I
yeah.
literally failed a progress check. They had me step out into the hall. One of the instructors came out and spoke with me. Do you understand what you did wrong? Yep. Do you know how to do it right now? Yep. Come back in. I went back in and I passed.
Mhm.
I went home, still a student, still moving forward in the program, and I was so angry at myself. And
Mhm.
I call it being a recovering perfectionist, having this idea that I can be perfect. No, folks, none of us can be perfect. In fact, embrace the failures because we're going to learn a whole hell of a lot more from our failures than we are from the victories.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that's a good lesson. I always like when people get mad after like a big race, you know, I'm like, yeah, like I get it. I get it. It hurts. It really hurts. You worked so hard for it. Like
Yeah.
it, especially marathons, like, and you can't just go out and do another marathon, you know, you have to wait because you just can't do it. And, but you know, it's like having to explain to people, like, once again, I think the ego, like perfectionism is all ego, right? It's
Yeah.
all, and it's like being a little bit, yeah, like you can be perfect. It's like, you're a human. Yeah. Like, so I think that's important, you know, running just relates so well to every part of your life.
No, I agree. Hey, Nell, for folks that hadn't heard your voice before, but now they are a huge marathon fan, like I am.
Everyone.
I know one marathon runner, and that's who I'm rooting for the next time I turn
Yeah,
on the
right.
TV,
I
and it
love
is
it.
Nell Rojas. What are the best ways for people to follow you or connect with you?
Um, Instagram, Nell Rojas Running. And then my website's rojasrunning.com.
I love it. Well, Nell, time is my greatest, or I forgot to say what I was going to say. Listeners, this is not a cleaned up version. I just hit record and I go with it. I'm going to make it real easy for the listeners. Both of those contacts for Nell are going to be down in the show notes. Nell, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff. And you gave me an awful lot of yours. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
Wow, folks, what did you think about Nell Rojas? I was a little bit embarrassed about the couple times that I miscommunicated. I thought she was talking about her being big time. She's a professional athlete. Of course she's big time. What she was really saying was the fact that she is a more built, more muscular woman than a lot of other marathon runners. You know what, though, what I appreciated about that, folks, is the grace that she gave me. She kind of laughed at me a little bit, and then I realized that I had said something dumb, and she was graceful. She allowed me to apologize, and we moved on and still had a great conversation. Hey, folks, Jaimie and I want to hear from you. How are the conversations going? There's a few different ways for you to communicate back to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That will cause the next episode to come up in your dashboard. You can also rate and review us on Apple and Spotify. There's 5 stars waiting on our main page. We'd really appreciate a 5-star rating if we've earned those 5 stars, folks. If we haven't, keep your stars. Instead, shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know how to make it better. Future Marriage Monday topics or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the people in our tribes. Take care of each other. God bless.